So we're going to be talking about posters and presentations, and um, I'm not sure whether you've done many posters before, right? But I'm pretty certain you don't appreciate how common and important posters are. Obviously, you've just given your 3-minute talk, and you've probably given other presentations, and you've probably even had a few guides on how to do this before. But we're going to do it again because really, well, you're going to see some of my mistakes from my past, and you're going to see that you can't learn this stuff too much, too often, or too well. And why we're going to talk about it so much, right? Because posters and presentations are a way of letting people see your work. And if people don't see your work, if people don't understand your work, if people don't know of your work, then it might as well has never been done, right? If nobody reads your paper, well, then there's no point in even publishing it. Beyond that, a good talk can boost your personal brand. And I hate to sound like somebody talking about the grind set or something, but the way that people see you in science is important. That's going to decide whether they're going to invite you to a talk. They can even pay you to give scientific talks, right? This may be news to you. You can get small personal funds given to you. It can also be good for securing collaborators, right? Somebody's going to see you talk and go, man, that was a great talk. That person really sounds like they know what they're doing. I really want that person to come and help me with this problem I have. And they're only going to ask you for help if they are instilled with confidence by seeing your talk or your poster. Now, I could say this slide like 900 times throughout the talk, but it's so important to think about your audience. Okay, you've got to put yourself in their shoes when deciding what kind of talk, what kind of poster you're going to be given. You're going to be giving, right? So if you are giving a poster and you're in a hall with 7,000 other posters, right, which is not an impossible number, um, your poster needs to be attention grabbing. If you are giving a talk to, let's say it's me, right? I'm giving a talk to a bunch of other cellular neuroscientists who all use the same techniques I do. Well, I might give a talk one way, going into some technical details, going into some of the more complicated uh, avenues of my analysis. But if I'm giving a talk to the whole department, right, or maybe I'm giving it to high schoolers, I'm going to give a very different talk, even if it's on the same area. The other thing it's worth thinking about is how interested is your audience. Now, you may always assume potentially that your audience is massively interested in what you're about to say, or maybe you might assume they're massively disinterested. But you need to think about that, right? So if you're giving the final talk at the end of a seminar and you're the keynote speaker, right? People are going to see what you are saying. But if you're one of 10 talks in a stream of talks, you need to do something to try and stand out. And finally, especially if you're the last talk on a Friday afternoon and there's been 4 talks, your audience is tired. Their brains are cooked. You need to probably simplify things a little bit, or at the very least, do something to try and grab their attention. So this is a photo of the poster floor of Society for Neuroscience, and this is showing like a quarter of the posters at best. You can see that there are thousands of people in these rooms. I mean, Society for Neuroscience is and I'm not trying to be like neuroscience is fancy here, but it is one of the largest conferences in the world. There are only 3 or 4 of similar sizes. There are only 3 or 4 um, conference centers in America that are large enough to hold it. Okay, and if you go to a big international conference, you're likely to come across something similar. So you can see if you put a boring poster up on the wall here, people are just going to walk right past unless you're doing something very fancy, very interesting. So grabbing attention is important. This is actually not from Society for Neuroscience. I found this one from uh, the the Geological Society, but it's in one of the same massive conference centers. You can see that there are some aisles here that are packed with people, and there are some aisles that are empty. One of the best way of getting lots of people to come to your posters is to have your poster beside one that just, they publish their work in Nature. Then you'll get a lot of spillover. But it is important to realize that while I'm going to be talking about how to lay out your posters a lot here, it is important to realize that a lot of people choose their which posters they're going to attend before they've even set foot on the poster floor, right? There's often an abstract booklet or an online search, and so good abstracts and titles are very important. Okay, and I stress this because often what's going to happen is you're going to spend weeks and weeks and weeks putting your poster together, right? You're going to craft it as well as you know, and you're going to be super proud. And then when it comes to submission day, you're just going to copy and paste something from a paper, into the online form and think, nobody's going to read that. Everybody's going to read that. It's super important. So don't slack at that last sort of hurdle. It's very important. But still, a lot of people are just going to be wandering up and down these aisles looking for something interesting. And if your poster looks intimidating, it looks boring, it's just filled with text from one end to the other, they're not going to stop. So, as I say, many posters are well attended simply because they are eye catching. Okay, so the other thing that I sort of want to talk about posters is that I and most other people, right, sit and craft their posters in front of a computer screen, right? They're 10 centimeters away from it. They can zoom in, they can zoom out. People viewing posters are often viewing them at a meter's distance or a meter and a half or 2 meters away. So they need to be big and bold. So let's embarrassingly look at some of my historic posters. Why? Because, don't do what Donnie Don't does. All right. Don't copy this, right? So this is the second poster of my PhD. I was very proud of this work, right? This was the first work that I'd come up with myself, done completely myself. It has basic physiology, it has computer simulations, it's got some pretty advanced techniques, and so I wanted to show everything that I had done. Also, it was the second time I had ever presented internationally, and I was nervous. Okay, so part of the reason I put in all of this text was because I wanted this fail safe, this these are cue cards to me, right? I was thinking if I forget what I'm saying, well, at least I can read off this. I was thinking, people are going to be impressed when I show them all of these technical details that I've done. And also, I was being a bit lazy. These figure captions are copied and pasted from the paper. All right. A poster is not the scientific paper. You do not need all of the details, right? I'm just looking at this and going, oh, I could have gotten rid of that. I could have gotten rid of this. I could have gotten rid of that. I was just trying to be fancy and show everything and impress people. But in doing so, I made the poster worse. Okay, look at all of those figures. 5 columns. Uh, look at all of the text. Why did, some of this detail in this method is of relevance, like how old these animals are, but the exact sodium chloride concentration did not need to be in there. So think about your message. Okay. Now you might think, okay, so I did this, terrible poster. I will have learnt my lesson. Mm, This is the last poster of my PhD. Now, I think it's a better poster, right? We're down to 4 columns. We've got bigger images. We've got less text, but still way too much text, right? I've got some descriptive stuff where I'm describing the results. Why do I need to describe the results if I've got a big picture here showing the results? I also have some of the figures like showing the results, and then I've got the summative graphs showing them again, right? That's redundant. Yes, it's important in a paper because it reflects things about confidence and, error sizes, but I didn't need them. I didn't need all of the details. I could have focused on the most crucial things to aid understanding. I say a slight improvement because I've gone from a pure blue here, right, to a slight off blue. And so, as I say, never use pure colors. So never use like pure green for green, pure blue for blue, pure red for red. It looks bad. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. And here is the first poster of my first postdoc. I still hadn't learned properly. Now, again, I still think it's a bit of improvement. I've got a nice cartoon showing the signaling cascade, as opposed to making people figure it out from knowing, do I expect them to know what SQ22638 does? So this cartoon helps them understand, but still too much detail, still way too much text. Um, in fact, if I'd gotten rid of the text, this would have been pretty good because I did remove a lot of unnecessary figures. But yeah, I was just trying to impress people and had the opposite effect. Okay, so there's been a lot of talk in the sort of social media sphere, the scientist social media sphere, about how to improve posters. And so a couple of years ago, there was this idea for better posters, hashtag better posters, right? And they wanted this. It's almost empty, right? They just have the main finding in a couple of sentences in the middle, and then a few graphs off to the side. Now, I actually recommend that you go and you listen to this guy's talk on where he proposes better posters, and it was good enough to convince some people. Now, I think this has gone way too far, but but I think it's underlying logic of people are in a hurry. They are looking at your poster from a distance. They just want the the take home finding and they want it quickly. I think that's a good thing to get to. But we are scientists and there can be important information in the details, and so we should not just get rid of it. So for his idea, I think the idea of having some large text for people who are just wandering past so they can get something. I think having some, if the information is important, it is critical to understanding your work, then I think you've got to include it, but potentially you can make it smaller for people who are interested in smaller details. Colors are important, right? So I've got in the background here some like infographics, and I think looking at some of these infographics is a good source of inspiration. Now, infographics are fundamentally a different thing, right? They are designed to be looked at up close. They are made to keep your attention on them for as long as possible, right? So sometimes, or often, they put more information on than they really need because they're trying to keep your attention for as long as possible. But yet, a lot of the layout that they use, a lot of the sort of the way that they use figures to tell a story is a good thing to study. And again, they do that same trick that I was just talking about, where they can have crucial information large and less crucial information small. I think that is very good. Now, I've also talked here about the 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 colors, what colors you should use. And I talked before and said, you should never use a pure red or pure green or pure blue because it just looks unprofessional. Um, but we're not graphical designers, so we need help often. So I like this website here, coolers.co, but if you just Google color palette generator, you'll find some good ones, and they will just give you example ones to use, and you can just generate them, and you'll see um, colors that look good together and potentially suit your story well. Fonts, right, is another important thing to consider. Now, it's my general advice to just always use sans serif fonts, right? So these top three are sans serif fonts. They are without serifs, while Times New Roman is a serif font. So at the bottom of all of the lines, there is that thickening. That is the serif. Um, it is my advice not to use serif fonts, and don't use, artistic fonts, creative fonts, script fonts, right? You want your text to be easily read, and there are scientific studies out there that show that people can read sans serif fonts slightly faster than serif fonts, and they find it a more pleasant experience to do so. Negative space, blank space, white space, call it what you want, right? You don't need to cram your poster from the leftist left margin to the rightist right margin with text and images, right? It's fine and it's good to have a bit of space between your columns, between your figures. It makes things easier to follow. It makes the poster look less intimidating. And so I'm a fan of some big, cool, even if slightly pointless images, right? So if you've collected some beautiful fluorescent image during your work, put it on your poster, even if you don't super need it, right? If you look at that image, you go, oh, that's cool. Every time you look at it, you think, oh, I love that image. Chuck it in there, but do not use it as a watermark on the background of your poster. It makes your poster hard to read because you have to read the text in front of the image. Just put it to the side. Now, like all of these things I've said, right, these are not like hard and fast rules that you must follow. And if you do not follow it, you will have produced a bad poster. These are my guides. But I'm a pretty strong believer in don't use the watermark background across the whole back of your poster. Just put it in, put it in somewhere. So some people and I think there's a lot of people who take my idea of taking inspiration from infographics want to completely destroy the classical poster 2, 3, 4 column layout, right? And they want the text all, coming like this and all sorts of fancy stuff, right? We are used to reading text in columns. All right, the human mind the scientist mind has been trained. You start in the top left, you read down that column, you go to the next column, right? And that intuition can help you, right? Because it means that the people don't need to, oh, where's figure one, where's figure two, how do I read this thing, right? They know where to start and they know where to end, and so use that those priors that people have. But if you do use a column design, don't mess with it, right? So I've seen people use columns, but then they put the content horizontally across, and that's very confusing to people. All right, so we're going to use some of what I've talked about to try and improve this poster here. I didn't do an absolutely perfect job, right? Because making posters actually takes quite a long time. But here is my attempt to improve this poster. So what are we looking at? We've got this very long, scientitious sounding title. We've got all this text. We've got lots of images where there's lots of redundant information. The actual final points sometimes get lost. This is my improved version of it. All right, so I've made a simpler title. I've got a nice eye-catching image. I've got clearer images and titles. I've got more white space. I've removed a lot of redundant graphs. I've basically got rid of all of the text paragraphs. It probably would have been nice if I could have made a little bit of space to put, a couple of bullet point conclusions, right? So because sometimes you're not there at the poster, I think most people would agree that in a perfect world, you should sit by your poster whenever it's up. But nonetheless, and the reason I say that is because if you're not there, then having a few bullet points to like, this is the take home message, can be very useful. But still, I think this is a huge improvement on what I had before. I think many more people would come. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's a big improvement. Okay, so some random poster producing tips. Before you print it, right? Because printing these big posters on A0 paper is expensive and it takes a long time. Often you send it away and you don't get it back for a couple of days. So get a projector and project it onto the wall at about the right scale and have a look at it. Have a look at it, obviously, for like spelling mistakes and all of that, but look at it and go, does this look like an inviting poster? If I was walking along, would that grab my attention and would I come and see it? If you're traveling with your poster, put your poster in a poster tube and keep it on use it in carry-on. Don't stow it. I know several people who have lost their luggage, including their poster, when traveling internationally. Now, if you've got money to burn, print a fabric one. You can get this done. Fold it up and put it in your luggage. But don't use this as your main poster because they get creases and they kind of get all skew with and it looks kind of weird. But even if you keep your poster as you carry on, sometimes you can forget it. Believe it or not, right? You take a 12-hour flight to America, you get off in LAX and you forget to take your carry on. Practice presenting your poster. Now, you've gone to all this trouble making your poster. You followed my rules. It looks beautiful. It's easy for people to understand. Okay, but when it comes to presenting your poster, you are going to be standing beside your poster, and people are going to come up to you and they're going to say, "Can you guide me through your poster?" And if you go, "Oh crap, I never thought about doing that," you can be in trouble, right? Another thing, because we've already said, think about your audience. It's fine for you to ask, "Hey, are you familiar with this? Do you know, is this your area?" Or do you're allowed to try and figure out exactly what detail to give your poster presentation to these people. And something that I'm a little torn about, but I've seen this advice, is it says put a photo of yourself on your poster. Because what can happen is somebody walks up to your poster, right? They've never heard of you, but they're like, I'm kind of interested. I saw this abstract, the title seemed cool, and now I look at the poster, it looks like it, this person knows what they're talking about. And they walk up and they're like, who should I be talking to, right? Now, what you can do is you're sitting there standing beside your poster, you see someone looking interested, you say, hey, would you like me to guide you through the poster? But that can be a little bit intimidating, especially if it's like your first time. So if you have a photo of yourself on the poster, they know it's yours, and if they've got any questions, they can talk to you. Now, I'm I'm still a little iffy on this idea. Um, I'm not sure what I think about it, but an alternative, which I think is a easier alternative for everybody, is get a little sticker or a badge. You can get these, printed for like $1 that says, poster presenter, right? And you wear that, and then the person who's trying to figure out what's going on in your poster is going to see you standing there with the badge, and they're going to go, "Is that your poster? Can you?" Right? And it makes it easier for everybody.